Darla Cravotta. I'm the Director of Community Relations and Special Projects for Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald.
County Executive Rich Fitzgerald here. We're here to talk about trails, and it's one of the proudest accomplishments over the last 12 years of all of us working together in building a trail system and many trails that have improved the quality of life here in Allegheny County.
I want you to talk to me about your memory of driving a front loader in 2012 and then cutting a ribbon for the completion of the Great Allegheny Passage in 2013.
Well, it was one of the very first things that I had done as executive. Now, I had done a lot of this work as consul, but that 335-mile trail, 150 of which we call the Great Allegheny Passage, the gap, had a gap in which people could not make the final connection. And when we made that final connection over in West Homestead that day in 2012, riding that front loader and the ceremonial connecting that last piece, the joy and excitement you could see from the people who had been working on that project for years, and the bikers and the trail advocates. And I remembered even myself, I had to borrow a bike to do that final loop, and it even prompted me to get a bike and now start riding those beautiful trails that we've had. And of course, I've ridden that trail all the way to Washington, D.C. 4 times with a group of people, and it has really opened up that avenue from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. through our beautiful Mon Valley industrial communities, all the way through Westmoreland and Somerset counties, and the beauty of what is Pennsylvania and Maryland. And it's added economic vitality to towns like Connellsville and McKeesport and Homestead and the waterfront areas. And we know, the study that was done a couple of years ago, that 1 million people a year use that trail. They might not all go the entire way, but they utilize it maybe for a day or for a few hours and just connect.
So talk about your investments then in the trail system, because you've had plenty of this.
Well, it's been a worthwhile investment. I think any investment that we can make in our riverfront trails and in trails that connect us to the riverfront and connect us to each other, number one, improves the quality of life for people in those communities. It makes the modes of transportation better. We're connecting people to our rivers. People love to be on the rivers. It's the one thing I've learned in working with colleagues around the country. Their rivers and their lakefronts and their ocean fronts, whatever water they have, people want to be there, whether it's tourists, whether it's the residents who live in those communities. So for too long, we've got these beautiful rivers that many of us for generations were cut off because of industry, because of factories, because of railroads. So people lived in these beautiful towns and they didn't even have access to the river that was in their own town. So anything we can do to open up and unlock that beauty and that advocacy and that connection to the rivers is something that we've wanted to invest in. And I know you and the Economic Development Department and our Public Works Department, all of us from the county manager on down have been advocates to make sure we're working to make these connections.
So we're standing in a park right now, Etna Riverfront Park and Trail, that was part of one of our first active Allegheny grants. So how has that grant program that the county has played into your vision of trail development?
Well, it's a couple things. Number one, it allows us to leverage other funding. County taxpayers alone could not build all of these trails and parks that we've been able to do, nor could the state, nor could the municipalities, nor could the private sector. But all of us working together can do that. So the Act of Allegheny allows the planning to begin, so the towns can look at, okay, how do we build the trail? Where does it go? How do we construct it? What's part of it? So it does take the planning, and then you get a budget, and then you figure out what needs to be done from that standpoint. I think of a town like Etna, which is a wonderful, wonderful community, which again, in many ways was cut off from the very river that they were part of because of industry, because just what had happened, you know, decades ago. And now they've got this beautiful, beautiful riverfront park that they've been able to build, that we've been able to help them build, to be able to connect them not only to their neighbors like Millvale, like Sharpsburg, and you know, Aspinwall, and on up through the river, all the way up, hopefully to Erie, that now they're connected to a lot of different places, and it makes it a much more desirable place to live. So they're going to attract young residents that want to have a beautiful green space and activation to be able to live with. Also, for people that want to commute by bike, Now, if you're working in Lawrenceville, you're working in the Strip District, you're working in Aspinwall, you can get on your bike and ride the trail, ride to work. You don't have to fight the traffic. You don't have to worry about, finding a place to park. You ride your bike. So this isn't the only community doing this. On the other side with Homestead and West Homestead and Munhall and Whitaker and all the towns in the Monongahela Valley, the same type of thing is happening. And then, of course, down in the Ohio, the same way, the McKees Rocks, the Stowe. All of these connections that we can make to each other, again, improves our quality of life, improves our economic vitality, and improves our desirability for residents to want to live here and companies to want to locate here.
So, building on your Active Allegheny program, you made a choice about taking dollars from our ARPA, from the American Rescue Plan, and putting it towards trail projects. Can you talk about why you made that choice and what kind of projects you funded?
So the federal government, our friends in Congress and the administration, decided to infuse money to help the economy. We've been able to use that money not only in putting people to work, but improving this infrastructure of trails and investments. So we were able to do 18 projects, over $22 million that we invested. The fact that we put $22 million probably leveraged maybe $100 million worth of investment in improving our quality of life and, again, connecting us to these beautiful rivers you see behind us right now.
It will, actually. That $22 million is going to leverage that $100 million. I want you to talk about a couple of the projects that were funded that were multi-municipal. One of them was funding from Verona to Oakmont to Penn Hills to Plum. Another one is one of our favorite ones, which will go from the city of Pittsburgh to Aspinwall.
Yeah, I think one of the most transformational, we call it the Brilliant Line. It is a rail line that connects from, in essence, Bakery Square, Homewood and Larimer, all the way down basically above Washington Boulevard. So people driving down Washington Boulevard, of course, see those beautiful arched bridges. Well, above those arched bridges is a rail line that is going to be a trail. That'll be a trail that will not only connect all the way down to the Allegheny River, but across the Allegheny River, going parallel to the Highland Park Bridge, connecting over into Aspinwall, over into Sharpsburg. So somebody will be able to get on their bike in East Liberty or in Larimer, ride that trail all the way down over to Aspinwall and Sharpsburg and do all these wonderful things. The fact that we've been able to get that bridge and get that line, 4 miles I think it is altogether, to give it into the public domain that'll connect those communities and improve the quality of life, the property values for the people in Lincoln Larimer and the people in Homewood and the people in East Liberty. It'll be a transformational investment that we made. I think about years ago when we got the Riverton Bridge, which connects Duquesne to McKeesport. It was an old U.S. Steel bridge that they weren't using anymore. It was a hot metal bridge, kind of like the hot metal bridge we know about over in the south side. And we got it for $1. For $1, we've connected, and people have been riding that trail across that bridge. Millions of people have done it over the last 10 or 12 years, and this will be the same way when we get to Brilliant Bridge.
It's overwhelming when you think about connecting communities to each other when 25 years ago, people didn't think about how they could come together on these multi-municipal projects. You mentioned the Verona, Oakmont, Plum, and Plum. That's 13 miles that will eventually connect from the river to Boyce Park. How does that make you feel as the county executive to have been able to fund that kind of project?
Well, it's exciting. It's exciting and it's transformational. Any of these things we can build, people get excited about. Not just me as the executive and you working in administration, but I hear it from people all the time. Thank you for this trail. I never knew we could have a trail. And they get passionate about it. And anything we can do to improve that, we're going to continue to do.
So there's 2 other places I want you to talk about in terms of the connectivity to the airport and, of course, Corrigan. Those were 2 major projects.
The airport is again, another beautiful, interesting project. We've connected the trail from the airport, which means you don't need a car or you don't need to get an Uber or a cab when you get off of an airplane in Pittsburgh International Airport. You can rent a bike and ride from airport property. The trail connects to the Montour Trail, which also connects to the Great Allegheny Passage, which obviously connects to either downtown Pittsburgh or McKeesport or Washington, D.C. or Clairton or any towns in between. And, you know, we've kind of made it bike friendly from Pittsburgh International Airport to connect that trail. And I want to thank the Airport Authority and Christina Casotis and their team for making that happen, because airports are busy places and you just don't do anything you want sometimes when it comes to the FAA and flight patterns and runways and those type of things. But it was something that we thought was really important and we wanted to do. And people have used it and people love it. You mentioned the Corrigan Drive. Corrigan Drive, again, is a little over a 2-mile stretch right through the heart of South Park that is kind of where things happen, near the fairgrounds on one side and the Cascades and some of the other beautiful things, the ice skating rink on the other side. But it was a 4-lane, I'll call it almost a highway that used to, you know, people would cut through if they wanted to go from Bethel Park and Route 88 over to Brynsville Road and the South Park side. I guess you'd call it a road diet. We kind of closed it down so where it's 2 lanes, 1 lane each way, with a lot of restrictions on speed because it's not a highway, it is a park. But also some beautiful trails on both sides so people could more safely navigate what's going on in along Corrigan Drive. And people love that 2-mile stretch to go, again, take a walk. The tennis courts are there, and again, the game preserve and so many things that you can go see, playgrounds if you got your kids with you.
So the Trail Development Fund has funded projects up and down the corridor that we're standing on, from Millville all the way up to Harrison. And this really speaks to a lot of the regional partnerships that Allegheny County is involved in.
Yes.
We have 2, 3 major ones. Can you talk a little bit about not just the Gap, but about Erie to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and when you think about the trail development along our riverfront towns, one of the very first meetings I had when I came into office was in Harmer, and I know you were there. And we tried to bring together all the mayors and town councils from all the communities, Cheswick, Springdale, as you mentioned, Millville, Aspinwall, all the way up to Tarentum and Brackenridge to the county line, you know, wondering, are they really going to want to be part of this network? Because if somebody doesn't want to be part of the network, that's a break in the trail, the link gets broken. Every one of them wanted to be part of it. Every one of them realized the value of being connected and using the riverfront trails, whether it was Brackenridge, whether it was Springdale, whether it was Tarentum, that this is a great access point. Now, you mentioned the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail. We've talked about the 335-mile trail from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., along the Monongahela, Youghiogheny, Potomac River. Well, there's also this beautiful going up the Allegheny River that could connect all the way up to Erie. It's a little shorter, it's 270 miles, and many of the communities going up to Erie, the Venango counties, the Clarion counties, the Westmoreland, Armstrong counties, all want to see this connection. And that's something that we're in the process of us building our Allegheny portion, but also partnering with our friends in Armstrong County, whether it's going through Freeport and Ford City, all the way on up through, you know, Oil City and Titusville and other Franklin, other communities up into Crawford County, all the way to Erie. And it was interesting when we had an event a few years ago that every single county commissioner every single county was represented by their county commissioners at that event.
When we laid down the medallion.
We laid down the medallion in Erie as you get to Erie, Lake Erie, which obviously is a beautiful, beautiful place to bike just in and of itself. So the connection that we'll be ultimately able to build will again be transformational for many of these communities that are going to utilize their riverfronts for bed and breakfasts, for coffee shops, pie shops, ice cream, get something to eat, fix your bike, economic development. We've seen it in places, again, I mentioned Connellsville, I mentioned West Newton. These are towns that are on the trail in kind of a strategic place where when people are making the trip, that's where they pull over, get something to eat, maybe spend the night, you know, spend some money. And we've seen economic vitality, and the very same thing is going to happen connecting up to Erie. And you know, you ultimately, when you get up there, you're going to connect to places like Buffalo and Cleveland and other cities along the Great Lakes.
Why have you been such an advocate for trails?
When I came into office, my thing was always about jobs and retaining young people. And to retain young people, you got to start with jobs and economic growth. People they're only going to live where they can make a living. But then if they've got choices, quality of life is going to be a big part of it. So if they can live in a place where they can raise their family in a nice place that has green space, that has activation places where they can live, and we've seen that happen. We've seen our young population grow in a bigger percentage than we've seen in half a century. A 20% increase in our young population, our young adult population in the last census that came out. Vis-a-vis where the nation was growing about 11%, we grew by 20%. We've seen property values in some of these river towns because they've become desirable. So people make an investment in a community knowing that that investment, which for most people their home is their biggest financial investment that they make, creates generational wealth. So we've been able to create good quality of life and again improve air quality, not just have, make that sacrifice. Oh, we're going to sacrifice air quality or the environment for jobs. Well, we've done both. We've increased the jobs, increased economic vitality, and improved and reduced pollution. 80% reduction in air pollution over this time. And we're cleaning up our rivers from again, an industrial past that used our rivers in a different way. So our air and our water is much, much better. Our quality of life is much better. You look at the beautiful greenery that we have in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's as beautiful as any place in the world. So to utilize that and make that part of the experience of living here in Allegheny County is something that I wanted to be part of. So the investments that we've been able to make in these type of infrastructure projects, connecting people with trails recreationally and commuting-wise. So there's a double use or triple use of these trails. Isn't just strictly on recreation. It's also about being able to again get out of your car, get to your place of work, get to where you have to go, get to school by using a bike.
Like the county parks, the trails in the county, you actually experience them. And that's what comes through for me is your passion about them, your commitment to them. And I remember when we had to borrow a bike for you. And between open streets and the commitment and the investment you've made, I've been thankful for it because it has made such a difference in our county.
I've gone through 2 bikes now, so I'm on my second bike. So I've put a lot of miles on the bikes and enjoyed every foot of it, every square foot of it. So it's been great.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us with the Trail Conversation with Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald.